Okay, we are live. All right, so we're going to wrap up the pre-work for tiny habits today. And I know I've been reminding you all week. In case you need one more reminder, make sure you get your email over to me. I will be uploading that list tonight or tomorrow morning, and you'll get a welcome email from BJ Fogg. It's automated. You'll also see a note from me at the bottom. There's a video on there. You already know me, so it's kind of an introduction video. You can watch it or not. And then it'll give you your tiny habit recipe link in that email, and you will set your tiny habit recipes that will get you ready to go for Monday. Part of the tiny habits coaching from BJ's standpoint is that he's doing research on what is effective and not effective in that 5-day training. So he's going to ask you to write an email back with just all the directions are in there. Just know that I will also be addressing you personally if you need some help with your recipes. So you'll get an email from me just saying, hey, let's try this or let's try that. And actually, for the sake of time, because there's so many of you doing it, and because we have this live group, I just want you to be prepared that what I'm going to do next week is, rather than email each one of you individually this long coaching, I'm going to be going live on here addressing some of the patterns that I see in your recipes. And this happens with every group that I coach, that there's these patterns in recipes. So I'm going to try to address some of them right now today to help you with your recipes before you even write them. And then next week, I'll be helping you adjust them, and I will be going live. I don't need to say your name. Everything will be confidential, but I will talk about some of the habits and the recipes that I think need to be adjusted. So all that is to say, don't forget to send me your email. On another quick side note, just housekeeping. A lot of you are asking me about the shift. We start on the 15th of January. It's my small group program. I'm going to do a whole nother video set for you all later, but just because I'm getting questions, it's my small group program. It runs for 11 weeks starting January 15th. You get a deep dive with me. All of this coaching that we've done and everything that I keep saying to you, I don't have time to go into. We go into all of that in the shift. It's a step-by-step transformation process from soup to nuts. Tiny habits, behavior design, neuroscience, vibration, energy, work, belief systems, paradigm shifts, how to align your vibration, all of it, how to do all of that happens in January. The reason I'm telling you this is because there are a lot of people on the wait list, more people on the wait list than there are spots, but the wait list will hear a week before anybody else. They will hear that the doors are open. So get on the wait list if you are interested at all in joining the shift. I will put the link in the comments to join the wait list, because not only will they know a week before, but there's also 2 bonus calls with me for the wait list. And part of it is going to be setting up your new year with behavior design and with tiny habits to be really successful with all of your goals. So none of this random goal setting. I'm going to take you and walk you through a process for setting your goals for the new year if you signed up for the shift. So I will put the link in there for the wait list, and I really, really encourage you to get on it if you're enjoying this and you know you want to continue and deepen your work in this practice. Okay, that's it for housekeeping today. So you will be designing your tiny habits recipes. Go into the files and look for the tiny habits sheets that I uploaded yesterday. They're right there for you. And a couple of things to say about your tiny habit recipes. Yesterday, we were talking about how tiny habits start small and then they grow. So think of it like a tree. If you were to uproot an oak tree and plant that tree in the ground in your backyard, that is a very, very big tree with a really, really heavy root system, right? And if there was let's say you planted it on Monday, and on Wednesday there was a giant windstorm, there's a good chance that that tree is going to topple over, right? Because the root system has not had time to take hold into the ground. And it's a very heavy tree and a very intricate root system, and it hasn't had time to take hold into the ground. So there's a very good chance that tree would topple over. Conversely, if you planted a tiny little, I don't know what kind of plant, name any plant, a tiny little plant with a smaller root system, and you put it in the ground right there, and it's nice and low to the ground with a smaller root system, and that same windstorm came up, it would be much less likely that that plant would get uprooted and out of the ground and out of the soil in that windstorm. I want you to think about your tiny habits the same way. When you decide you want to create a yoga practice and you buy a yoga membership and you carve time out of your day to make 6 classes a week, that's like the oak tree. It's too big, it's too heavy, and the roots have not had a chance to get into the ground yet. When you plant a tiny habit, like I talked about yesterday of one of my clients who rolled out her yoga mat after she fixed her coffee. It's like that little plant, small root system, and it had a chance to take hold into the ground, and those roots got really strong and it started to grow. That plant had the opportunity to grow. So given the context of that, and it's not just a platitude, it's not just a, oh, that's nice, that would be really sweet if it grew. There is good cognitive neuroscience to why that happens, why it lights up the right brain chemistry in your brain to allow it to stick. It ignites that dopamine pathway when you celebrate and say, hey, I did that, which will allow the brain to trigger you to do it again, or will cause the brain to trigger you to do it again. When your root system is too big, when your oak tree is too big, it doesn't have the same effect on the brain chemistry, okay? So a couple of things you want to think about. If you are trying to create a habit that you would like to grow, in other words, if what you want to do is create a yoga habit, and that yoga habit ideally is, I don't know, 20 or 30 minutes a day or something like that, make sure that where you plant the tiny habit, there is room for growth. So her tiny habit was after I finish my coffee, I will roll out my yoga mat. Does she have time in her day in order to let that yoga habit grow, right? So if she only has 5 minutes, if she rolls her yoga mat out and then she's got to take her kids to school, well, that's not a very good place to anchor your tiny habit to. So I would request that she anchors her tiny habit to a place where she has some space in her schedule for that to grow. Okay, so that's number one. If you want to grow a habit, you need to anchor it to a place where you have some space to grow. Another thing is, let's say you want to have the habit of watering your plants. Okay, and let's say your plants are in the living room. Then don't anchor your tiny habits to something that's in your bathroom. Okay, so you want to anchor your tiny habit to a location specific place. If your plants are in your living room and you brush your teeth in your bathroom, you don't want to anchor your tiny habits to, after I put my toothbrush back in the toothbrush holder, I will fill a glass of water to water my plants, because the glass of water to water your plants is in the kitchen, your toothbrush is in the bathroom. You want to make sure that it's location specific. So anchor your filling your glass of water to water your plant, or maybe it's I will water one plant or something like that, should be anchored to a habit that happens in the kitchen or happens in the living room, something location specific, okay? So make sure it's location specific. Make sure that if you want to grow a habit, that you have space where you've anchored it to grow. The other thing, what was the other thing I wanted to say? It just slipped my mind. It completely just left my mind. It'll come back to me. Oh, that's what it was. Make sure your tiny habits are very, very specific. So instead of after I finish my coffee, I will roll my yoga mat out. We want it to be after I put my coffee mug in the dishwasher, or even better, after I close the dishwasher. We call this the trailing edge behavior. It's the very last thing that you do. So instead of after I finish breakfast, it's after I close the refrigerator. Instead of before I sit down to my meal, it's after I pull out my chair. Instead of After I get in my car, it is as soon as I close my car door, right? So we want it to be very, very, very specific. That's for the brain. It needs to know exactly when you are going to do this thing. After I turn on the burner, after I close the refrigerator, after I put the cap back on the toothpaste, after I flush the toilet, okay? Instead of after I go to the bathroom, after I flush the toilet, or after I turn the light off, right? It needs to be very, very specific. So those are some of the things that I will be reviewing in your tiny habit recipes. Is it specific? Very, very specific. We call it the trailing edge. If you want it to grow, do you have space in your life in that moment for it to grow? Is it location specific? Have you anchored it to the right location for what you want to do? Just to give you some examples, BJ likes everybody to start off with some super, super simple behaviors. Oops, sorry, getting a message here. Stop. Okay. Super, super simple behaviors. So for instance, he will say he would like everybody to start off with what he calls the Maui habit. Side note, I'll tell you a funny story. In all of my programs with all of my clients, I've been having them do a morning mantra for as long as I can remember. And I always tell them to do the morning mantra first thing in the morning when their feet hit the floor. Okay, so I'll tell my clients, when your feet hit the floor, I want you to say your morning mantra. And it's very short and it's very simple. And it happens when their feet hit the floor, right? Fast forward to 2020, when BJ's book came out, lo and behold, BJ calls it the Maui habit. And he also anchors it to feet on the floor. And when I first talked to BJ and said, oh my gosh, there's so much in your books that I'm already doing in my work, and I just didn't have the theoretical model for it. This is one of the things that got me so excited. So BJ calls it the Maui habit. But what it is a very specific tiny habit. And you anchor it to something the first thing in the morning. I always anchor it to feet on the floor, because no matter where you are in the world, you're going to put your feet on the floor when you get up in the morning, right? So a very specific tiny habit recipe that you could start with is, after I put my feet on the floor in the morning, I will say my Maui habit, and then I will celebrate. And what the Maui habit is some version of, it's going to be a wonderful day. I expect great things today. Something wonderful is going to happen today. For me, I do this every morning. It's something to the effect of something wonderful is going to happen today, or I'm so excited about my day, or I expect something wonderful to come into my life today. Some version of that, something that feels good for you. So your first tiny habit recipe could be, after I put my feet on the floor, I will say my morning mantra, and then I will celebrate. And the more I do this, and the more I celebrate, the more it just becomes a natural habit for me. And I do it every morning. It's just part of how I wake up in the morning. And in the shift, I teach you about why that's important to live intentionally, and how that, retrains the brain to think differently and stuff like that. So that could be one of your tiny habit recipes. Another tiny habit recipe that BJ recommends, I don't do this one, but I think many people do. I mean, I do floss my teeth, but I don't do this as a tiny habit recipe, is that he'll do the flossing habit as an example of how a tiny habit recipe starts to stick. And it would sound something like, after I put my toothbrush back in the toothbrush holder, I will floss one tooth, and then I will celebrate. So it becomes a very tiny habit, right? And very specific. After I put my toothbrush back in the toothbrush holder, I will floss one tooth, and then I will celebrate. As a reminder, if you want to do extra credit, you are welcome to. BJ in the book tells a story about how he wanted to do push-ups. And so he created a tiny habit recipe for his push-ups. And it was after he flushed the toilet, after he went to the bathroom, after he went pee, he'll say it in the book, I will do 2 push-ups, and then I will celebrate. And as he describes it, he still does it after he goes to the bathroom, anywhere he is, except for, I think, restrooms that are gross, where he doesn't want to get down on the floor, but in his house, right? After he goes to the bathroom, he does 2 push-ups. And now he says he does, somewhere between 40 to 60 push-ups a day or something like that, because sometimes when he gets down to do 2 push-ups, he'll do 10 or 5, or he'll do more, and he does it each time he goes to the bathroom, and all he has to do are those 2 push-ups, and then he gets to celebrate, and he has completed his tiny habit, and that has organically grown into a push-up habit for him. So, okay, any questions on creating your tiny habit recipes? You can, so when you send me your email address, I'm looking, there's no comments on here, no questions from you. When you send me your email address, you will get a notification from me today or tomorrow, and from BJ. You'll be in the group. It'll give you your tiny habits secret link. You'll enter your recipes. I will be able to see what the recipes are. I can give everybody feedback on their recipes, okay? And throughout the week, you will get asked if you are doing your recipes, how it's going, things like that. Next week, I will be coaching you all on your recipes, reminding you, iterating them, helping you change them, listening for your feedback on whether they're sticking, helping you create your recipes to make them stick, all right? There's one other thing I was gonna say. Oh, if you're not participating in the Tiny Habits challenge next week, or if you're just not into it, I will tell you that we will be doing Tiny Habits coaching next week for the habits. So you can just follow along and listen along. I'm sure you will still get some really good value next week if you don't feel like being part of the email chain. But that's what we will be doing next week. Okay, I don't see any questions, so we will jump off from today. Feel free to send me any questions that you have, and I look forward to coaching you next week. Have a great weekend, everyone.